Good evening. Our top story tonight, the NFL draft has officially wrapped up. This is the first Player Profiler Today show that we have since rounds 1 through 7 have gone through. All the unsigned free agents have signed with their teams. And so now we have the best look at the rosters that we've had all offseason. So no more speculation, no more mock drafts. We're here now. We know what the teams look like. Obviously, there's still going to be some free agency moves now that the draft is passed. But for the most part, we have a good gauge to understand whose stock is up, whose stock is down. So what we're going to do tonight is, and this is ambitious, we're going to go through every single division and talk about the biggest stock up and biggest stock down. And the thing that I'm going to try my best to do, I don't want to keep you guys here all day. We're going to touch on every single team. So all 32 teams. But for sure, we're going to talk about like stock up, stock down in the division, but give a comment about stock up, stock down on every single team, at least one of the other, like either a stock up or a stock down, if that makes any sense. So yeah, it's going to be a really fun show. We're going to dive really heavily into some of the biggest names. Like, what are we doing now with Kyren Williams? Anthony Richardson stock has taken off. Aaron Rodgers, like Breece Hall stock, like what are we going to be doing with that? So we have so much of that to talk about, and we're going to get into it on this show on Player Profiler today. Okay, so this is one of the first times I've been able to do this and it's not pre-recorded. So we're live right now. I see people hopping in. If you guys have comments, please throw them in the chat. Make sure I know how to click through. Yeah, throw them in the chat. And we may be able to talk about them, especially when we get to the division. So I'm going to start with the NFC West, and I'm starting there for a very specific reason. Kyren Williams, man. I would argue he is the biggest loser in fantasy football from the NFL draft. So like we all know, the Los Angeles Rams, they drafted Blake Corum, national champion, All-American, 27 touchdowns rushing last year. Like, they drafted him in the 3rd round. So for those people who, I don't want to say are casual, but who may not understand, 3rd round draft capital is decently high for a running back. Once you get to the 4th, 5th round, you're getting a little dicey, but 3rd round, that means you expect this guy to play. And so for the Rams to draft him, Blake Corum, that's a real bad sign for Kyren Williams. Now, I know on Player Profiler, on the live draft stream, thank you guys, everybody who tuned into that. There was a lot of, there's no other way to say it, a lot of excitement around the fact that Kyren Williams is going to potentially be a fantasy bust. I don't subscribe to that. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I just think it's all about what our expectations are. There's people who think that he's going to only get like 5 to 6 to 7 carries a game, and Blake Corum's going to be the workhorse back. I 1,000,000% disagree with that unless there's an injury. But to think that Kyren Williams is going to just keep the crazy snap share that he had last year is just not. The math doesn't math. Like, so last year he had he led the entire NFL from a running back standpoint from snap share. He had basically 84% snap share, number 1 in the league. Dominator rating, you can check on playerprofiler.com for this rating, 35.1%, number 2 in the NFL. Literally, just these things can't happen if you bring in a Blake Corum into your backfield. Even if it's a 60-40 split, those numbers come crashing down. And the biggest concern, like I said, is the red zone work. He dominated red zone work. When he was healthy, he was getting nearly every touch. And now that you have a running back who is so adept at being able to score in a variety of different ways in Blake Corum, that is another area that's going to come down. The one area I think is safe for Kyren Williams is the pass catching work. He's a great pass catcher. I think he's, no matter what, he's the 3rd down back, like no question. But you are going to be losing some work to Blake Corum on 1st and 2nd down. The only way I could see the actual backfield flipping to where it is a Blake Corum backfield and Kyren is a secondary back is if Kyren suffers some injury, Blake Corum gets rolling, and then that's kind of how the story goes. But unless that happens, I do think it's going to be a really muddied committee situation. And obviously, you are drafting Kyren Williams to be the back. He's not some incredible athlete. He ran a 4.65. Like, he's not a big guy. He's under 200 pounds. But you're drafting him so highly. You're going to try to draft him in the 1st round again this year prior to this weekend because of his snap share. So if that's not there, it's kind of like a hands off in the first round for me. I'm absolutely not taking him in the first round. I'm probably not taking him in the first 3 rounds on Kyron Williams. All right, so that's a stock down, clearly. That's a pretty big loser from the draft. Biggest stock up in the NFC West to me, and it's kind of weird to say stock up for a rookie. Marvin Harrison Jr. is about to dominate. He's going to get so many targets. They did not do much to address the wide receiver position in the draft in a substantial way. They've not done anything in free agency. They've obviously lost receivers in free agency. And obviously, you're competing with Trey McBride. And obviously, I guess like James Conner out of the backfield, but that's really it. Like, you are about to Marvin Harrison Jr. is about to go ham. He's about to go ham, turkey, whatever. Like, he's about to go crazy with receptions this year. The thing about him is, like, obviously, there's so many Larry Fitzgerald comparisons. And I even though that feels like blasphemous, it is a great comparison. Obviously, size, the style of play, like amazing short area quickness route runner, great hands. I really want more yards after catch from Marvin Harrison Jr., but that's really picking nits there. And obviously there's some drop issues here and there, but again, that's picking nits. Like, the upside is gold jacket level. And the best thing about it from a fantasy perspective is he's going to a situation where he is the alpha, no question. There's not some other guy he's going to have to compete with. Even like a Malik Neighbors, there's at least some okay receivers around you, and Darren Waller. This isn't that. You are the dude. And so I expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to eat. For the rest of the division, there's really not too many big movers in my eyes. For the 49ers, unless there's a trade that happens with one of the receivers, and it looks like Debo would be the most likely to get traded, I think Brock, I was going to say Brock Bowers, Brock Purdy. It's too many Brocks now in the NFL, in what's called the West Coast. But Brock Purdy is definitely a big winner to me. Ricky Pearsall is just a tactician. He has speed for days. He's a tactician. He's also just really good in the run game. Even you wouldn't expect it for like a thinner framed player. So he's really solid. And so I do think Brock is a winner. And then for the Seahawks, I absolutely had nothing. I had no winners or losers here. That team looks real similar to how they looked last year. The one thing I would say is it does seem they're fortifying their defense. So if you wanted to say stock up for the running backs, sure. But they're really going to be splitting work. So that's what I think is happening in the NFC West. We're going to talk about every other division. We're going to go to the AFC West on the other side of this break. Let's hear from the Podfather.
This episode is brought to you by PlayerProfiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. So it's a great deal.
Thanks, Podfather. I'm going to hop right to it. Let's go to the AFC West. Let's stay on that side of the side of the country. I think the biggest winner in this division, and it's annoying, it's no shocker, Patrick Mahomes. He had a down year, quote unquote, from a fantasy perspective. He's going to come back with a vengeance this year because they are loading him up with some good weapons. Now, obviously, we're going to see what happens with the Rashid Rice situation. He's definitely going to get suspended, it seems. We don't know how long. I've been speculating, like, he may get hit with a 6 game. It may get reduced to like a 3 based on some historical situations, but that's complete speculation. We don't know. But if he happens to get Rashid Rice for part of the season, he's still going to obviously have Kelsey and Pacheco. You got Marquise Brown, who I think he's going to take off in this environment. But Xavier Worthy is just another level, man. Xavier Worthy, like he keeps, like Andy Reid compared him to Sean Jackson. I think it's a pretty good comp. But I do think that he honestly does some things better from an intermediate and shorter end of the field. Like, he is a very good route runner. You really wouldn't think it based on his size. Like, he is an incredible route runner. RAS score of 9.41. He just completely dominated. He is going to be a very good red zone weapon, surprisingly, because especially the way that the Kansas City Chiefs, they tend to use these really speedy receivers. Xavier Worthy is able to stop on a dime, change his leverage, and be able to get open in the red zone really efficiently. So I think that Mahomes is a major winner, top 3 upside for sure. Big loser to me. I'd say one of the bigger losers to me is Devontae Adams. I'm a Colts fan, so I'm very familiar with Gardner Minshew. I think he's a good player, real gutsy. His downfield throwing is not the best. And so now you're going to be dealing with Gardner Minshew because they did not address the quarterback position. You're now going to also have the addition of a Brock Bowers who will command some level of targets. You still got Myers there. I don't think Dylan Laub is going to take like a ton of targets away, but he's a pretty good pass catcher, so you got to at least consider that. And I mean, the biggest thing to me is this is a team who's going to run the ball. I think, like, subsequently, one of the bigger winners here is Amir White because they didn't address the running back position with the more traditional first and second down back. But I do think Devontae Adams, his stock is definitely coming down because of the way that the draft went. Now, to touch on some of the other teams in the division, I actually do think, again, rookie, Bo Nix is actually a pretty big winner. Going into this Sean Payton system, you have pretty decent receivers. They're not like world beaters, but they're very good for a young quarterback. Josh Reynolds is always super reliable. Same thing with Cortland Sutton. I think Marvin Mims is set to take off. And then you get your boy from Oregon, Troy Franklin, in the 4th round, the last day of the draft. Like, I think there's just so much upside here with the Hall of Fame coach and Peyton that he's actually he is really set up for success in Denver. And then if I had to go to somebody else, the Chargers, I do think that Herbert is a football winner. From an NFL standpoint, definitely winning. From a fantasy football standpoint, I think he's a loser. Even with the addition of Ladd McConkey and Brendan Rice, which I do like a lot. The way that this organization is moving, they are running the ball really heavily. They obviously got their offensive line set. I love that they picked Joe Alton. They didn't get like swayed to take a Malik Neighbors. They're going to pound the rock. Gus Edwards' stock is up. J.K. Dobbins' stock is up slightly. I'd like Vidal. I do think that there's some opportunities if you guys can pick him up, but this is a running team. They're going to run the ball. Herbert, great in NFL standpoint. From a fantasy standpoint, it's not going to be his best year. Efficient year, but just maybe not a high-end touchdowns year. All right, try to speed through that. If we can keep that pace, then we could actually cook through every single division. All right, and touch every team. All right, AFC East, let's move on. So, stock down to me. I mean, I don't, it's not like a big stock down, but it's definitely a decrease in his value. James Cook. I love James Cook. 1,000-yard rusher. Honestly, I was kind of surprised when I looked at that because like, I did not know he'd get 1,000 yards. Yeah, he got over 1,000 yards. He only got 2 rushing touchdowns. It's just that is the part to me that's kind of tough. And maybe you'll say like he'll do the same thing and not score a lot of touchdowns, so his stock shouldn't be down. But you can't really be dependent on a player being that great and not scoring a lot of touchdowns. The biggest reason I'm concerned about him is because they drafted Ray Davis out of Kentucky. I think he was a 5th-year player. He can eat some touchdowns up. I think he had 21 touchdowns his last year in Kentucky, 14 rushing, 7 receiving. He's a really good all-around back. He is a bigger back. The Buffalo Bills this offseason, they were talking to a lot of running backs, and like none of them were small guys. Like I don't even know if they actually interviewed Ray Davis, but they were talking to Audric Estime, Braylon Allen, Trey Benson. They were really looking for bigger backs. So it almost tells me, and especially with the fact that they got Ray Davis, there's clearly a desire to be able to be more efficient at goal line with your running back position in a young guy. And so to me, there's just a little bit of reason for concern for James Cook. That's probably going to knock him down a couple spots, if not around for me. I like him overall. Good runner, 1,000-yard rusher, great receiver, but his upside to me is going to be capped with Ray Davis. Next, if we're going to go to a big winner in this division, let's go with Aaron Rodgers. I was thinking about somebody else, but let's go with Aaron Rodgers. I do think he's a big winner. They've done a great job surrounding him with weapons now. So obviously, you got Garrett Wilson and Hall. Those are your stalwarts. But you add Malachi Corley. And I know on this channel, and make sure everyone in here, if you're watching this, make sure you're subscribing to Player Profiler on YouTube and Player Profiler News on YouTube and all the other socials. Malachi Corley is a fan favorite here at Player Profiler. He's a stud. He is a monster after the catch, and I do think you just get the ball in his hands and he's gonna give you fireworks. And so they have him now like man in the slot. Michael Williams coming off of ACL, so he may have a sluggish first year, but that's still a big play receiver, a great red zone target for an Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, your first pick, Fashanu. I love that pick, and he's not even going to be forced to start right away. You got Tyron Smith, who, if he could stay healthy, knock on wood, that's the biggest bugaboo with him. But if he could stay healthy, I mean, he was a number 4 rated PFF tackle last year. So he's still playing at elite level if he's on the field. The offensive line overall is just significantly better. And then he's not going to be the vice president. So he'll at least be able to focus on playing football. So for all those reasons, Aaron Rodgers is not a bad, like, last couple rounds, throw him on your bench. I do think a lot of people by the name value think that he's going higher than he is in ADP, but he really isn't. And I do think you'll be able to get Aaron Rodgers pretty much for free. And if you wanted to do the thing where you paired a Jaden Daniels with an Aaron Rodgers, I really like that type of strategy, where you get like a veteran with like clearly a really good upside on his team, and then you get a high upside rookie. But on the Jets, I do not think this is a stock down, so do not misconstrue me. I don't love what happened for Hall and Wilson. Now, first day, I was really happy about Wilson because they didn't draft Brock Bowers, and I felt like they were going to do that or get a Dunze or somebody. But they've added Malachi Corley. They've added some receivers, and I think especially with how I described Corley's going to get a lot of those short slot routes, which, I mean, Wilson dominates the entire field, all the targets. So that plus the fact that they have Mike Williams now, it just hurts a little bit from his target consolidation standpoint. Hopefully the upgrade in QB helps him more. And then Breece Hall, I'm not freaking out about Breece Hall. I honestly like Breece Hall more this year than CMC. But the fact that they drafted 2 running backs early-ish on day 3 is a little bit of room for concern. I think they obviously need to bolster their depth, but it's just something to keep an eye on because I'm going into this year assuming that we're getting workhorse Breece Hall. And if that changes because of like adding Braylon Allen and Davis from SDSU, I think that's something to think through. Okay. Let's just quickly touch on the other teams in the division. I'm interested in the rookies in the past, but I don't really have a big like winner or loser from this team. Ramondre, he literally is a winner and a loser, so I guess he's staying stagnant. I don't have anything for the Patriots. I'm going to keep an eye, though, on Baker and Polk. And then for the Dolphins, not a big loser, but definitely, like, Mostert is a slight loser with the addition of Jalen Wright. He's still the starting running back. He's still going to get the most touches, but obviously we know that this guy he struggled to stay healthy outside the last few years, which has been great. If he gets dinged up, I do worry about him losing work. Obviously, Achane is going to start to take over a little bit more. He's been bulking up, so hopefully he can survive the full season. But if Jalen Wright gets on the field, he is really giving them the young version of Raheem Mostert. Ideally, that's what you draft him for. And if he starts to take off more, it's gonna hurt his stock a little bit. So I do think that Mostert's kind of took a step down. All right, so that is the AFC East. Let's move on to the NFC East. Take a guess as who's the biggest stock down loser, whatever you want to call it in the NFC East, and it should be rather easy. Okay, it is clearly Dak Prescott because, like, what the hell's going on, Jerry? Like, what is going on, Jerry? Like, not a weapon. Like, not a one. Like, we said, no, Dak. We're not giving you shit. Like, we're not giving you anything, Dak. We're giving you nothing. Like, so they lost like half of their offensive line. They lost Gallup. They're losing weapons. They obviously lost their running back, and they did not backfill that clearly. Like, I don't know what's going on here. And they also lost a lot of pieces on their defense. Now, because they lost some pieces on defense, you could argue, all right, they're going to have to throw more, so that would be good for Dak. And maybe that's going to happen. But I guess I don't like banking on that in fantasy football. Like I like considering the defense, but I don't want to bank on the defense being bad for my quarterback or my fantasy asset to be good. And so I don't know what they're doing here. I really have no clue what they're doing here. They're just really just putting their hands on, sitting on their hands right now with the contract situation with Dak, CD, and Micah. Nothing that they've done has really given you a lot of encouragement. And I hope the offensive line, like the improvements that they are not improvements, but the additions they made actually live up to it. Guyton seems to be really raw to me. That's the tackle they took out of Oklahoma in the first round. Hopefully he could step up to the plate. I actually don't mind them just let Tyler Smith man the left side at like left tackle. But you are kind of hoping that these players live up to what your offensive line just was. And I think that's just like that's a tough thing to hope for on the fly with a team who now your depth is really in question now. All right, so that's Dak. I think he's a pretty big stock down, big loser for me. Biggest winner, there's a couple winners in this division, the NFC East. I got to go with Terry McLaurin, man. I think this is clearly the best quarterback he's played with since he's been a pro. And he's going to me, be the new Malik Neighbors to Jaden Daniels. He is a really good receiver. He makes his quarterback right a lot. He just comes down with big play after big play after big play. He's the clear number one. And especially now with his separation he made with Jahan Dotson last year, Curtis Samuel not being there to just eat up like 4 to 5 touchdowns, which he always does every season. Like, they are set up for him to do really well. And I also think that while, yes, they're going to obviously try to run the ball, it does seem like they are set up to like let the ball fly a little bit with Jaden Daniels. So I do like that a ton. I actually think this is the year where Terry McLaurin finally gets double-digit touchdowns. And if he does that, he's going to be clearly like a top 17 to 15 receiver, which we all think he is from a skill set standpoint, but it'll be nice for his fantasy value to finally line up with what we think of him as an NFL receiver. All right, let's see. Daniel Jones. So here, Jeremy's saying Daniel Jones, I'm assuming you have him as a big winner. They clearly did not draft a quarterback to replace him. Yeah, I'd say he's a winner. I don't think he's a winner in fantasy because I don't know what we're going to get out of that. But from just like a player standpoint, sure, I agree 100%. He's definitely a winner there. On that team, actually, I don't mind Malik Neighbors. I really don't. Hear me out a little bit. So they've done a lot to improve their offensive line. And so I would not be surprised if Malik Neighbors is just dominating share. They have solid running backs, but they don't have anybody who's getting a Saquon Barkley level, like touch share, target share out of the backfield. And to me, there's a world where like, I think Daniel Jones is not going to be healthy. It's been pretty clear he's not going to be healthy to start the season. I think Drew Lock's going to go out there and just be chucking it. And if we get any sort of extended playing time with Drew Lock, he's going to throw it up there for Neighbors to go get it. And Neighbors comes down with those types of balls. So it'll at least be interesting. He's definitely going to dominate the target share there. But yeah, I think we're going to see multiple quarterbacks in New York. None that I particularly love. Okay. Eagles, nothing really big from the draft. The only thing I say for them is you got to take Hurts down slightly just because of the addition of Saquon Barkley, the red zone work, the no Jason Kelsey for the tush pushes. And I also think because of the draft, I guess, their defense can't be as horrible as it was last year. It was awful, awful, awful. The improvements that they made on day 1 and day 2 in particular, hopefully that helps fortify the defense. And if their defense is more fortified, maybe they're not going to need to chuck it as much as they were. But I mean, for Jalen Hurts, his value is so much in like red zone, so much in touchdowns. And I do think Kelsey and Saquon are going to have a slight impact on him. And then the last player I just wanted to touch on was just like, I think Brian Robinson, it was kind of goes without saying his value fell off a cliff. I really was hoping Brian Robinson was going to get a lot more touches this year. But you added like Austin Eckler from a rushing and obviously running back reception standpoint, going to kill you. Rookie quarterbacks typically, especially the running ones, don't throw a ton to their running backs. Jaden Daniels is going to get his rushing yards as well. And so that's going to just eat in that total team rushing. And then he's just like, he's going to be 100% like touchdown dependent. And so I'm just not going to be in the business of putting Brian Robinson on my team unless there's some sort of injury to like Austin Eckler or something. All right, so that's the NFC East. I think we are doing okay. We got to pick it up a little bit. We're doing okay. This one's going to be quick because I actually did not see a lot of movers in this division at all. And you guys let me know in the chat if you disagree or agree. The AFC North, not a ton of like stock up, stock down here. Just a lot of meat and potatoes picks that really didn't change the outlook to me on nearly any of these teams. The biggest, I'd say, stock up for me in this division would be the Pittsburgh running backs, and particularly Najee Harris. So obviously we got Arthur Smith. You got a run-first coach. And I think the O-line improvements are rather significant. I'm a sucker for a center who's in wrestling. I was a center in high school. I wrestled. I was terrible at both. But I understand how important that type of nastiness, that type of hand positioning, and that aggressiveness is. And so I'm a sucker for that whenever I see it. Obviously, they took a tackle in the first round. I absolutely love what they did from an offensive line perspective, and I think they're going to be mauling people all over the place in this Arthur Smith scheme. They didn't draft, like, I like Roman Wilson, but they didn't draft like some like big and bad wide receiver one out here. And so I do think Pickens is still going to be there. But yeah, like I think they're going to run the ball like crazy. The one thing I would consider is Cordero Patterson, but I do think because of this new kickoff rule, I'm hoping it's more relating to that as to why they brought him onto the team and not him like stealing carries and stealing receptions from like Jalen Warren. I do think the stock is up for sure on the Pittsburgh running backs. Next, stock down. I really could not find a lot of stock downs. I guess I'd say Joe Burrow, but that's still contingent on them like losing to T. Higgins. I really don't see. Yeah, I mean they made offensive line improvements. I think their running game is going to be better than it was last year. Their defense should be better. This is a weak case. I can't even give him a stock down. That's disingenuous. Derrick Henry, I think his stock is up. They added some more offensive linemen. Here, so I see your question, or not your comment there. Jermaine Burton helps Burrow. I agree. I think, to me, Joe Burrow is just the jury is out until we know what's happening with T. Higgins. If we want to just assume T. Higgins is going to be there, then yeah, I can't say his stock is down. But if T. Higgins goes, I like Jermaine Burton, but he's not T. Higgins to me. So I would say his stock would be down if T. Higgins was traded. All right. Baltimore Ravens. Let's see. Derrick Henry, yeah, his stock is up. Offensive line, I think they've made some decent additions. His touchdown opportunities are going to just be significantly better. And honestly, the offensive line thing is less about the additions the Ravens made and more about how big of a difference there is between the garbage Tennessee offensive line and the line he's going to be running behind now. Now, playing with Lamar Jackson, he's literally never had a running back beat him in rushing yards. And I do think Derrick Henry is going to get over, like, going to lead the team in rushing yards. But clearly, there's like a built-in ceiling for that. So I do think that his rushing yards maybe hit a little bit. But the fact that Keaton Mitchell is probably not going to be healthy to begin the season, the fact that Lamar still is not doing a ton in the red zone, and this offense is just so good, Derrick Henry could easily have like one of those Jamal Williams types of season where he's at 17, 18 plus touchdowns. So I do like that for him. And then for the Browns, I do think that Watson's stock is up. He's going to be coming back healthy from the shoulder injury. Ideally, he's a kind of a weird injury. But they did give him tools. Like, I mean, they gave him Judy. Still got Njoku, Elijah Moore. And then Nick Chubb, he's definitely not going to be healthy to begin the season. So, like, they're going to be throwing the ball. And I do think that Deshaun Watson's fantasy stock is up. Now, his stock is up. I'm not taking him anywhere. But just hypothetically, yeah, his stock is up. All right. Let's see. Next division. We are cruising. I think we may get this done, and I may not keep you guys for like 2 hours getting through these divisions. So we just did AFC North. NFC North. There's a lot of stuff happening here, man. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff happening here. So big stock up to me. I mean, I'll touch on the Bears after this, but biggest stock up to me is the Lions pass catchers. They did not do anything to bolster that team, to bolster the wide receiver, tight end, or running back receiving positions, right? So I do think the trio of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and Jahmyr Gibbs, them being within the first 2 to 3 rounds of your drafts, I think is a safe bet. They've honestly only lost receivers. So Josh Reynolds is now on Denver. And he's just such a really reliable receiver. And I'm just not going to buy into J-Mo until I see it happen. I mean, I don't know how many years it is now, but for us to be banking on him to turn into a player that he's not, I think that's kind of foolish. So you have such a consolidated group of targets there for a team whose defense is going to get a little bit better, but still they're going to be chucking the ball a lot. I love the Lions pass catchers. I think they were big winners in the fact that there were not a lot of additions to their positions this offseason. Biggest loser to me, and this may be controversial, so I'd love to know. You guys could put comments in the chat here. I think the biggest loser is Jay Jettis, man. And I know there's so many people who are absolutely in love with J.J. McCarthy, and I'm not even saying that he's going to be a bust or anything. I just think that it'd be kind of foolish for us to keep him in the top 3 wide receiver conversation with Sam Darnold and a J.J. McCarthy. Now, everyone's going to say he was balling out with Nick Mullins last year when they were throwing the ball a million times a game. And I get that. I 100% get that. They weren't winning those games. And I don't think any team is like, their goal is not for that to happen. Their goal is for their defense to hold more firm. They'll probably try to run the ball more. Like that is not your target is not to be chucking the ball as much as they were with really low quality, terrible targets. And so for me to think that Darnold and JJ McCarthy, a rookie, are going to be chucking the ball all over the yard his first year, I just can't see that. And because of that, because of like the running, which I expect that to tick up, and because like year 2 Jordan Addison, I mean that there is like a second year leap that happens with a lot of these receivers. It doesn't help him get ahead of CeeDee Lamb, get ahead of Tyreek Hill. If Higgins is traded, he's guaranteed behind Jamar Chase. Right now, I'm still trying to figure out where they have those two guys, but yeah, Jay Jettas is definitely a little bit of a loser. Now, when I say that, he's still a first round pick. I'm not kicking him out of the first round. But he's not, to me, he's closer to like the latter third of the first round versus the top third of the first round. That's kind of what I'm talking about when I say he's like a loser or his stock is down. Okay. Who else? From like Packers, that was one where I was just reaching on trying to pick a stock up, stock down. I guess you'd say a slight stock down to Josh Jacobs, where he was set to get true workhorse touches. And now he probably still going to get workhorse touches, but you're going to be putting Marshawn Lloyd in the game because he's super dynamic as well, even if it's just on third down. So maybe it's a slight downgrade, but honestly, I don't even really believe in that. I'm not changing his draft positioning at all for real. And then for the Bears, Caleb Williams, man. We'll see what happens with the offensive line, right? But it's not terrible. I think the weapons are just so amazing. Like you got DJ, you got Keenan, you got Rome Odunze. I hate it for them in fantasy, but for Caleb Williams, that's amazing for him. That's amazing pass catchers who do such a variety of things that are just so helpful for a rookie quarterback. You obviously got Komet. Everett was really good tight end after the catch. And then DeAndre Swift is one of the best pass catching running backs in the league. So you really are setting up Caleb Williams for success. Now, I've said this ad nauseum on this show. I do think that Caleb Williams, I expect Jaden Daniels probably to have a better year 1 than Caleb Williams, because I expect Caleb Williams to turn the ball over a ton. He's very confident in himself. You could say cocky, but he's going to take a while to understand how quickly NFL windows close. You can't run to the sideline, throw the ball across your body and not expect a pick six. You're going to get a pick six. You can't be just dancing around the backfield and just holding the ball loose. Somebody's going to slap it away because they're incredibly skilled players. So I do expect his turnovers to be rather high his first year, probably going to lead rookies in interceptions. But over time, I do think he's going to be a great player. And in fantasy, I still think he's going to be able to overcome the turnovers with great play. All right, so that is the NFC North. I'm impressed with me right now because we are crushing through this, and I did not think we were going to get through this in such a short amount of time. Let me not get too gassed up, because then I may mess up these last two. All right, so now we're going to just stick to the South. Okay, let's go AFC South. I always give the disclaimer: I'm a Colts fan. I do my best to be unbiased, but I am a Colts fan, so I can't just say that I'm not a Colts fan. I'm a diehard Colts fan. All right. So let's start with the biggest winners. I'm going to start with the Colts. Really good draft so far. This draft that they had. And I do think the biggest winner to me in this division, I'd say, is Anthony Richardson. They are setting him up for massive success. So the offensive line, if you didn't know, was number 3 ranked in PFF last year, and they did a good job drafting multiple offensive linemen, and they are thinking rounds 3 and 4 of this draft, who are going to just be really good depth swing tackle, swing pieces, who have a lot of versatility all over the offensive line. And so that's obviously great for Anthony Richardson, who dealt with injuries last year. But obviously you got Michael Pittman. You obviously got Josh Downs. Jelani Woods, we continue to forget about him. He basically had a redshirt year last year. He's going to be coming back, the 6'7", amazingly athletic tight end who was scoring touchdowns his rookie year. He's coming back. But obviously in the draft, the biggest improvement they had was A.D. Mitchell. And so if you saw the draft, you saw maybe a lack of enthusiasm on his face. I think he's getting over it, but I think he's just obviously pissed off that he went so late. He was considered by a lot of people top 4, top 5 receiver in this class. Some people had him after Rome Odunze, and for him to be at pick 52 is amazing value for the Colts. This kid While, yeah, his production, I guess, could have been better, he did step up in the biggest games consistently. He is a very reliable weapon down the field. The speed is clearly there. I mean, he had a nearly perfect RAS score, relative athletic score. And one of the things that his superpower, I'd say, is his ability to separate down the field deep in his route. On a fly route, he will get you yards of separation late and deep on his routes. And for a player like Anthony Richardson, who has an absolute cannon, you can ask for nothing else. And I literally, like, all of those things with Anthony Richardson, I didn't even mention JT. Like, he's barely played it down with JT, and he's going to have him in the backfield now to take some of that pressure away and open up running lanes for him. Anthony Richardson, I'm telling you, he could be the MVP of this thing this year. Like, I've been looking at the odds of that. I'm probably going to put something down on Anthony Richardson MVP because, I mean, the odds are pretty favorable. Not favorable. They're pretty advantageous if you want to put a bet down on it. But that is one where I could easily see that happen. It really reminds me of like year 2 for Lamar Jackson, where nobody expected it, and then boom. Like, they set him up well. We kind of weren't paying attention in the offseason, and then he just starts lighting the world on fire. I could easily see that for Anthony Richardson. So he's my biggest stock up. Stock down, not super draft related, but it's more offseason related. It's got to be Tajay Spears. My excitement for him was through the roof, and he could still just have an amazing year this year, but it's really tough to see him. It's tough to see him really dominate in this backfield situation. Obviously, they brought in Tony Pollard, coming back a year removed from that broken leg. I do think he's going to be better than what he was last year. We started to see like the old Tony Pollard a little bit down the stretch, and I'm expecting to see that Tony Pollard through the full season. They just, it seems like there's been a lot of focus on that team. Obviously, adding Ridley, you have D Hopper already, you got Burks. Adding pass catching weapons seemed to be a pretty important thing for this team. And I don't know. I just get a feeling, especially with Callahan being the coach now, there's going to be a significantly higher emphasis on passing the ball with Will Levis and seeing what you got in that quarterback. So because of I think the rushing attempts just got to come down naturally based on the team being under Vrabel versus Callahan. The offensive line being better, but definitely not being proven like to be good. And then the fact that you're going to be splitting with Tony Pollard, those are the reasons why I got to be a little bit down on Tajay Spears. For the rest, there's a lot in this division. So CJ Stroud clearly up. His weapons are crazy. He could easily be a top 3 fantasy back. Joe Mixon's definitely up. I expected them to draft a running back. And that was one of the teams like them. I expected LA to draft one earlier, LA Chargers, and they didn't. I think stock up for sure for Mixon in that backfield. Jaguars, I think that slight downgrade to like Kirk, slight downgrade to Evan Ingram. They've added like a lot of receivers, either free agency or in the draft, but I will say the people they've added are guys who are basically going to be competing more with Zay Jones than they are going to be competing with Kirk and Ingram. It's just more about splitting up the pie a little bit. And I think that's really it. Yeah, I mean, clearly I talked about Will Levis, and I do think his stock is up as well. All right, we're getting to the last division, guys. Last division. We're touching on all 32 teams. Let's go. All right, so NFC South. Woof. Yeah, I'm gonna start with the stock down first, and I'll talk about a few other things. And I gotta talk about the Falcons. Whew, boy, stock down. Chuba Hubbard clearly stock down. I've been saying Jonathan Brooks to me was the best running back in the draft. Not that that means anything, but he was taken significantly ahead of Trey Benson. I do think the NFL thought that he's the best running back as well. He's coming off an ACL tear, so clearly I expect him this year. He's going to be ready by training camp, but he's not going to be the same guy we're expecting to see in his future career. But he is amazing at literally everything. Like, he's not the best. He's not elite at everything. He's very, very, very good at all aspects of being a running back. Great speed, amazing elusiveness. He's able to make one defender miss every single time. His understanding of like his vision and understanding of angles. I keep saying, like, if you see 5 yards ahead of you, if you're Jonathan Brooks, he's getting you 7 guaranteed. Like, he's a yardage multiplier whenever he touches the ball. And so a fully healthy Jonathan Brooks moving forward is going to be a problem. And I think that obviously Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, their stock comes crashing down in that situation. Stock down also to me in New Orleans. I don't think Spencer Rattler is going to take Derek Carr's job, like just outright in camp. But if Derek Carr, who's dealt with injuries, gets dinged up, one, I think he's going to try his best to play through it based on what I'm about to say. But if he gets dinged up and has to miss time, I've been saying this all offseason because Spencer Rattler is just a gamer. If he gets in the game, he's going to win a team 3 games this year. And now that he's on the Saints, I'm going to say it now. Spencer Rattler is going to win the Saints at least 3 games. And if, let's say, he goes on like a 3-0 run if Derek Carr was dinged up, they're not giving Derek Carr the ball back. They're not giving the keys back to the franchise. And so I do think that Derek Carr's stock is definitely lower now because they added a quarterback like that, of that caliber. Lesser player down for the Bucs. Sorry, guys. Wow. I was leaned on the cord there. I was talking the Bucs. Yeah, so lesser player down, stock down for the Bucs. Rachaad White, he has to definitely take a slight stock down. I don't think Bucky Irving is the next coming of Emmitt Smith or anything like that, but he's just a really, really good rushing running back as well as a receiving running back. One of the things that he is uniquely good at that kind of concerns me if you're thinking about Rachaad White is his contact balance. Well, yes, he's a small back. He didn't run like an amazing 40 or anything, so he's not super blazing athletic. He is just good through contact. He just does a good job staying up and continue to churn through broken tackles. And because of that, Rachaad White, I think he's so dependent on the workload. He's obviously dependent on receptions. I don't think that's going anywhere. But if Bucky Irving starts to show some more efficiency on his first and second downs than Rachaad White, I could see like Irving not taking the job, not even dominating share, but just eating enough into Rachaad White's rushing share where it's going to just be annoying from a fantasy standpoint. But I do think the offensive line help that they got in Graham Barton is going to help Rachaad White and his efficiency too from a first and second down standpoint. All right, Falcons, they're my biggest stock up in this division. So I'm going to talk about that. Then obviously we got to talk about Michael Penix. I think the Falcons trio stock is through the roof. I think that Bijan and Kyle Pitts could be the number ones of their position. And I think Drake London could easily be a top 10 receiver this year because they did not add a lot of depth. They really didn't add any significant depth of those positions through the depth. They did not add any significant depth of those positions through the NFL draft. Wow, that was a tongue twister. In fact, they actually lost depth at the tight end position because obviously Gerald Everett left, and they didn't really backfill the tight end spot with anything significant. So I do think that Kyle Pitts easily can be tight end 1, easily this year. I think that we're on path to see a year much closer to his rookie year, especially another year removed from his past injury. So I love Kyle Pitts. I think Bijan, he's clearly going in the top half of the first round to me in redraft leagues. And Drake London, obviously, I mean, they've of all the positions, they probably added most competition there, and Mooney and then Rondale Moore, I guess. But the one thing I will say is I think the thing that is really nice for those 3 pass catchers too is because they did draft Michael Penix. If something does happen to Kirk Cousins, you now have quarterback insurance so that you're going to have really good target quality. And so I do think that's a really, really big boost for all 3 of those guys. Speaking of Penix, I got to touch on this. I haven't been able to talk to you guys for a week, and clearly the draft just happened a few days ago, and the Penix story broke on Thursday when it happened. I think that Michael Penix is a good fit for the Atlanta Falcons in a vacuum. I think anyone who's saying he's not, that's a lie. He's a good fit for the Atlanta Falcons in a vacuum. I think the biggest issue I have with it is how unfair that pick is, much more so to Michael Penix, but really unfair to both quarterbacks. Let's just start with Kirk Cousins because it's a little easier. I mean, the guy he's saying he's going to retire in Atlanta. He's throwing out the first pitch at the Braves game. He signed a big 4-year deal. I mean, I'm not going to cry crocodile tears for Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's been really gaming the contract system for a while and get your bread, but he's going to get paid. He's going to be okay. It's still kind of annoying because you would hope that the Falcons would use such a high draft pick for another piece to help you get towards winning a championship. And I heard this on another show that it does kind of signal that you're not interested in winning a championship right now. You're really thinking about almost hedging your bets for the future. If you want to win a championship right now, I don't even care what it is. Like, you pick a player who's going to start for you right now and help you win today. And they just didn't do that. So I do think it's rather unfair for Kirk Cousins, but that really does pale in comparison to Michael Penix. I think this absolutely sucks ass for him. The soonest he's going to get on the field is in 2 years. That's like the worst case scenario almost for the Falcons, because Kirk Cousins would have to like flame out or be injured. So the earliest he's going to get on the field is in 2 years. And I believe he'll be 28 by then, or 26, 27. Either way, he's going to be a significantly older quarterback than he is today. The fact that this kid has already gone through so much, 4 season-ending injuries, 2 torn ACLs. He's a 6-year senior. He did what he was supposed to do. He's such a good prospect to plug and play that I was thinking, like, the Vikings, amazing fit. Raiders, amazing fit. Denver, amazing fit. Like, these are places who kind of, you're almost getting like a pseudo veteran with Michael Penix, because you could plug and play him right now, and he's going to be older than some of the players he's playing with in the NFL today. And the fact that this kid who's gone through all of that has to sit again, it's just complete bullshit to me. It's just bullshit to me. And I'm sorry, excuse my language. It's garbage. That's garbage for him. Just personally, that's garbage for him. Now, he's a good kid, and I know he's been saying all the right things, but that really has to eat at you. And so that's why, to me, the situation is just so weird, because one, the Falcons did not do anything with that pick to help advance them towards a Super Bowl. They're hedging their bets on like future potential. And then 2, for Penix, like, you just really are like, you're locking down a kid who, honestly, of all the picks in this draft, he's good to go right now. He's ready to play an NFL game right now, and you're going to make him sit. I really hate the comparison to like the Jordan Loves and et cetera like that. Jordan Love was nowhere close to Michael Penix from a pedigree standpoint. He had the tools, but he was raw, very raw. And also, they didn't just sign Aaron Rodgers to a 4-year deal literally weeks prior. So I really, there's no comparison. To me, it's kind of like, there's no way you could tell me that's a good pick in any situation outside of the fact that you got a good quarterback on your roster, which at the end of the day may be the most important thing. Maybe Kirk Cousins gets injured early. Maybe he's not what you expect him to be year one, but then I would always, argue, why pay him $180 million? Okay. That's going to be it for the show. I'm going to stop yapping about Michael Penix. We got through all 32 teams, guys. Thank you guys for hanging with me there. I'm going to be on next week. We're going to see, as the rookies get into the rookie camps, if anything starts to develop. I know there's a lot of 5th-year option news coming down the pike as well. And we're going to start to really formulate our rankings around what these players are going to be this upcoming season. So thank you, guys. See you next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.